Greetings, everybody. I'm Larry Williams, the Director of CARMA, the Consortium for the Advancement of Research Methods and Analysis in the Rawls College of Business at Texas Tech University. It's my pleasure to welcome you to a CARMA Quick Chat. And as you may know, the CARMA Quick Chat is the opportunity that I take to get to know a little bit about the presenters that are going to be contributing to CARMA's programs and to be able to share that information with you all before their actual presentation. So it's my pleasure today to be with Dr. Viswanath Venkatesh, who is the eminent scholar and Verizon Chair of Business Information Technology at Virginia Tech University. And the reason we're chatting with him is because next Thursday on October 3rd at 11 a.m., he's going to give a webcast lecture that CARMA will be honored to stream. And this is a webcast lecture that goes beyond our traditional lectures that we give that focus on management faculty, and we're just delighted to have this opportunity to bring somebody who is an eminent scholar in research methods from another discipline, in this case, information systems. So, Venki, it's a real honor for us to be hosting your lecture next week, and we're excited to have this opportunity to chat with you now. So, how'd you end up where you're at? How did you end up as a professor and then one with an interest in research methods?
Well, thank you, Larry. First, just kudos to you for the amazing work that you're doing and have been doing with CARMA. And it's a wonderful forum. I've been a beneficiary, as of many of my students, in learning through the dissemination of the knowledge that comes through CARMA. And so it's an incredible honor to actually be invited to be a contributor in this space. So even though I'm in information systems, I feel like I'm also in the management discipline always, because Andy Van de Ven, of course, was one of my teachers.
Uh-huh.
I learned theory from him and have published papers in management journals. So I feel very much part of the community. So hopefully can bring that interdisciplinary touch to what we're going to talk about next Thursday as well. Well, the reason I got interested in research methods was really after my early research, which was as a positivist, trained at the Carlson School at the University of Minnesota, doing surveys, experiments, lab experiments even, and trying to really figure out, when I was not able to answer the research questions, or when the findings were not quite what the theory would suggest or what our hypotheses would suggest. And I said, there has to be another way where we can find what the quote unquote truth is. And so as I started trying to broaden my interest in terms of research methodologies, and I said, okay, there's another world of methodologies, which are qualitative methods out there. And so the more I started looking into methods outside the ones on which I was trained, I felt like, okay, there are opportunities to actually contribute in advancing research methods as well, beyond just saying, okay, I need to figure out how to answer my research questions. So I said, okay, now there's an opportunity for me to do something and help others who might have similar struggles, but contribute by contributing to the methods and moving the methods forward as well.
And so along that journey, what was it that led to your special interest in mixed methods that is behind so much of the work that you're known for?
Yeah, so that was again actually attributable very specifically to a research project that I was doing in India, and trying to understand my primary interest at that time, technology adoption by employees in a bank in India, and how their jobs were being affected, or doing very similar studies in the US using the job characteristics model, Hackman Oldham stuff, and found that, well, not a single relationship in the model was supported. Not one mediator, not one independent nothing was supported after the implementation. We said, what's going on here? We have nothing. It cannot be. And so at that time became the first time that I said, okay, let's do some interviews or let's take advantage of some of the conversations we've had to try and see if there is another explanation. And so that took me to qualitative methods. And so that was probably not the best executed mixed method study, but certainly it was one that made me interested in understanding, hey, what's happened here? Could I have actually expected or developed a better model in a hypothetical deductive way, but using qualitative methods? Or could I, at that point, it was more like, can we now do a post-mortem on this and try to say, hey, what happened? What went wrong first in our sort of method development process, in our theory development process, and what is it that's gone on to try and help us figure out what's going on with the particular phenomenon there. So there are the qualitative methods, the interviews that we did with the employees, the interviews we did with customers, with management, were all tremendously helpful in actually, you know, saying, hey, here's what the theory is in this particular context. And so, of course, we took our licks in terms of the first two journals where we sent it. We got soundly beaten up because we really didn't have, sufficient insights until we actually integrated richly the qualitative method and the analysis of the qualitative data. And then we had a much better picture and also being able to identify some of the contextual boundary conditions of the job characteristics model. So that's what actually, that was the particular project that took me into becoming, okay, I really need to do quantitative and qualitative methods or try to figure out how they work together and see if we can add to that body of knowledge.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that was a few years ago, as we might say. And as is true, I think, of all the methods that we use in our substantive research, there have been a lot of changes. And so, in the time since you became involved as a reviewer or a scholar in the area of mixed methods, what kind of trends have you noticed in the papers that attempt to use mixed methods in studying the phenomena that they're interested in?
I think first, in terms of trends, I think we're seeing more people interested in doing mixed methods and recognizing its value. So that's been a just an overall observation. I do get a lot of papers, or had got a lot of papers when I was on these editorial boards, which were mixed methods papers, and I think we see more of those mixed methods types of papers in the top journals. I think that more people are therefore learning how to do mixed methods, recognizing its value and learning what to do, how to do mixed methods. When I started in this journey and was serving in editorial roles, and I would get these mixed methods papers, and I would say to myself, okay, here's a qualitative reviewer, here's a quantitative reviewer, and both of them hate at least 50% of the paper. So, so there was, unless I stepped in and really shepherded the paper through, the papers wouldn't make it. And now that I think has been a shift, I think there are people who understand it, understand, qualitative and quantitative methods. Even if they're qualitative dominant or quantitative dominant, they understand enough of the other method, and importantly, appreciate enough of the other method to say, okay, there's value in this whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And so I think that that's a big difference. I think we're going to see more and more scholars, and we're already seeing more and more scholars who are trained in mixed methods, not just quant, but also effectively integrating them, knowing when to do what, and designing good mixed method studies. Before, otherwise, it would be a lot of like, oh, okay, here's a qual, here's a quant. Okay, put them together. It's a mixed method study. That's not a mixed method study. That's just two methods which may or may not fit together in telling an overall story. But I'm seeing a lot of positives in terms of how people are doing this and doing a great job.
Yeah. Well, it seems like that at least for some time, it was the case that people would use both methods in a study using one to try to overcome the limitations of the other. And but I think you make a point that I want to follow up on, which is that being a good mix, it seems to me that being a good mixed methods researcher requires more than just being technically sufficient on the quantitative and the qualitative side. And it has to do with that boundary and that interface and putting them together to where the sum is greater than the parts. Is that kind of how you see it too?
Oh, absolutely. I think that the way of looking at it as um, overcoming the limitations of one method with another method, the old sort of Cook and Campbell triangulation kind of spirit, and saying that I'm going to do a survey because I or a field study because I can overcome the lab experiments, external validity concerns, or vice versa with the internal validity concerns. I think that that's just a very, very small part of why we might do mixed methods or why we might do, say, qualitative studies to help with the quant or vice versa. But really, as you said, I think to understand what exactly a mixed method study, a mixed methods approach can do for someone to just do better research, to be able to answer research questions you couldn't answer using just one method
Mhm.
or one type of method. That's really where the action is. Or, you're getting into new phenomena and saying, how do I approach this in a systematic way so that I can unearth some new ideas before studying this instead of just being hypothetical deductive and anchored to my old theories with the confirmation bias that comes with it. Instead, I want to bring some novelty and insights to it. How can I do that? So mixed methods is really about trying to do better research and answer research questions that we cannot answer with just one type of method.
Yeah. Thinking, I imagine that over the years, you've encountered a lot of people who don't know much about mixed methods. Some of them starting from a quantitative orientation, others starting from a qualitative orientation. And as you talk to them, they reveal what they think about mixed methods, but that may represent like some core misunderstandings or incorrect perceptions. So are there any of those that we can kind of help alert our audience to as they start to think about mixed methods research more?
I think one of the very core things that people need to potentially change or at least appreciate would be an openness to paradigm pluralism. Because my own journey was one where, I was trained a positivist, thought that way, didn't really understand even though I had a philosophy of science class, an amazing philosophy of science class, I was just trained a positivist in terms of how I came out of the PhD program. So regardless, people tend to come out with some, especially the more they're trained in the philosophy of science, they tend to come out viewing science a particular way. And I
Mhm.
think that openness to different paradigms and at least saying, okay, I can appreciate positivism and I can appreciate interpretivism, and maybe I'll continue to be more of one than the other. But that openness, that paradigm pluralism is a very critical first step for someone to be able to pursue mixed methods research. And I've noticed that sometimes people cannot do that in their first or second attempt. So it's better if they can work with someone else who has a different paradigm and they engage in that intellectual dialogue. So together, they are paradigm pluralists, even if any one of them it continues to be whatever they were before the project started. But hopefully, at the end of it, if it's especially someone they enjoy working with, like as well. Hopefully, they come out on the other end being a bit more open to different ways of thinking about and looking at science. So this is something I think people just don't give much thought to, and they say, oh, okay, well, I just use these different methods. But you really have to make that shift when you think about the ontology or the epistemology, even not just the methodology, because sometimes we just get so focused on the methodology when we think about mixed methods research and say, hey, the research questions drive our method choice. Yes, but then you back it up one more level, and people have to be willing to at least be open to these multiple ontological perspectives and be open to multiple epistemological perspectives. Otherwise, it's very difficult. And people just be talking past each other or reviewing, by holding the papers to a different philosophical ideal compared to what the paper intends to do. So I think that the first and biggest hurdle is that paradigm pluralism, the education around the paradigm pluralism, and a willingness to be open to different paradigms.
Yeah. Well, I'm reminded, there's another kind of challenge in that process, and that is that oftentimes there's a view that the philosophy of science course, that content should come really early in one's methodological training. And I can appreciate the arguments for that, but when you're doing it that way, I remember for me, it was all kind of abstract. And so I think, somebody that gets exposed after they've already engaged both in some quantitative and qualitative research would get so much more out of that philosophy of science. It's so easy when you get it under that timing that I mentioned to just say, "Oh, I don't need this stuff now. Teach me how to run the software so I can get to a p-value." So
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, I think I probably didn't appreciate the course,
yeah,
philosophy of science course, as much at the time, though Jerry Smith was the teacher and he was phenomenal. I was taking copious amounts of notes, but it was still, as you said, it's just very abstract, very dense when you read the papers. And but I think I did appreciate it a lot more later,
yeah,
especially when I felt like, okay, I need to shift. I need to be able to appreciate other ways of looking at the world and other ways of looking at science.
yeah. Well, of course, Vinky, all of our methods are evolving, and as we try to, those of us who teach methods, try to improve the tools that we have to work with. So within the scholarly community of mixed methods methodologists, right? Are there certain kinds of trends or issues that the discipline is struggling with that people like yourself are trying to help us move forward with?
I guess two things come to mind. The first is a very sort of a method science type of issue, which is the integration of the qualitative and the quantitative methods, the actual mixing. Where does it take place? Where does it need to take place? Because one of the things that we run into when we talk about this is people reacting saying, are you saying that I always need to do mixed methods? Are you saying that I need to mix at every stage?
Uh-huh.
And I need to have my research design mixing. I need to have the analysis mixing. I need to have the storytelling mixing. That's not really the case. So I think one of the struggles really is to be able to have, I don't know if, maybe wouldn't be as step by step as quantitative data analyses or structural equation modeling could be, but to be able to have a better clarity and guidance on when to mix, how to mix, so that the researchers can take advantage of the idea of mixed methods research without necessarily feeling it as like, oh, now you've just doubled my work or more than doubled my work because I have to do a lot of these different things. I think the other thing, of course, that's already in the conversation is the qualitative dominant or quantitative dominant. So people don't need to feel like they need to do equivalent status all the time. So there's a little bit of a difference. I don't know that the mixed methods methodologists are struggling with this issue, but I think certainly communicating this issue or communicating how to balance some of these things so researchers can do this comes to mind. So I'd say mixing, how to mix, when to mix, where to mix is an ongoing issue that I think we're we were trying to, I guess, researchers in this space, methodologists in this space want to help and want to solve, want to have better solutions. That's one. And the second one is a very practical thing. I think there's another recent book as well, aside from ours, which talks about, which is more of a manual, how to kind of more guidance to authors. And in our book specifically, one of the things where we talk about paper templates, what are different ways in which paper should be structured? Because if we're thinking about the typical, say, series of experiments or even an experiment in a survey within the quantitative space, the reviewers and editors know what that model is supposed to look like, what that paper is supposed to look like. So there's a template that everybody shares. There's that shared understanding, but there isn't a shared understanding of what a mixed methods paper should look like.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, there are so many different purposes and ways in which mixed methods research can be done that there isn't one mixed methods template, just like there wouldn't be one way to write a quantitative paper. Well, if it's a survey paper, it would have different content from. If it's a lab experiment, from a quasi experiment, it would be structured a bit differently. But people know and understand that. But I don't think we've reached that point. So I think communicating that and getting that, sort of shared among the community, I think is a big issue in general in this among the methodologists, is how to and how to then write it and how to create the scientific product that will be publishable.
Yeah. Gosh, Vicky, it seems like for every question that I ask, your answers lead to more questions. So, but I'm sorry, we have to keep it short. So, as I mentioned in the intro, we're here because of your webcast lecture you're going to give next week. Can you kind of give us a preview as to what you're going to be talking about?
Yeah, I'll talk just a little bit about what mixed methods research is, but I want to be very practical about it in the presentation. So I'm going to talk about the 7 common mixed methods purposes and when each of those purposes might be helpful to researchers. What are the research circumstances under which a particular purpose might be helpful? And the closest we have to illustrations in the social sciences for papers that try to do that type of purpose. So again, some of these papers are older, so they may not necessarily follow all of the guidelines as we have them and understand them today, but the closest they get to are the types of research issues they faced. And hey, this is what they did. This is what this purpose is. So hopefully people can see situations that they encounter and say, that, purpose number 2 is my thing. So let me look at this example. Let me see what I need to do for purpose number 2. Though in the talk itself, I wouldn't have time to do this, but we do have templates that map onto each of these 7 purposes in our book, which I'll at least, point to in the presentation.
Yeah.
So that's my plan.
All right. Well, that sounds like a great one. Again, that'll be next Thursday, October the 3rd. For those of you who are familiar with Karma, we traditionally stay on Fridays, but the lecture that Vinky will be giving is offered as part of a special series of live in-person events. So he's actually going to be here on the Rawls campus. And you can go to our Karma website. That's Karma TTU, as in TexasTechUniversity.com. And there'll be, we have an event page created that has some information and some resources related to the presentation, along with guidance for how to access. So thanks so much for fitting this chat into your schedule, and I'll look forward to seeing you next week.
Yeah, likewise, Larry. Thanks for the opportunity. Look forward to seeing you at Rawls.
All right. Thanks.